and today we're going to be talking about generators. Two different types of generators actually. We're going to be talking about solar generators and gas generators, and the pros and cons of each, and what maybe you should look at getting if you're interested in having some sort of power other than power that's on the grid. The pros of a gas generator are going to be number one, a lot of times these generators that run off of gas can do, it's called a dual fuel setup. So a dual fuel setup is going to mean that you can run gasoline or you can run propane. And propane can actually store for a really long time, 20 to 30 years. Typically with gas generators, you're going to be able to have a lot more power on hand. So you can get generators that are 1,000 watts, 5,000 watts, 10,000 watts, 20,000 watts. They're easy to fuel. If you have gasoline and it's good gas, or you have propane and you have all the connections to actually hook it up to your generator, it's easy to do. You can hook it up in a matter of maybe 5, 10, 15 seconds and you've got fuel on hand. There's also the option that you can store up fuel, like gas, if you put fuel additives in it, if you're going to be storing it for a prolonged period of time, or propane, if you have a quality propane tank. You could store for 20 to 30 years with just a good propane tank, which are great options. And you also have the added benefit of being able to have a broader power spectrum. So you can go all the way down again to 1,000 watts or maybe a little less, all the way up to 20, 30,000 watts in a gas generator. Now let's talk about the cons of a gas generator. The first one is going to be probably the biggest, and maybe not the biggest, but it's definitely a concern, is the noise. So you're not going to be able to run these discreetly, and you're not going to be able, even if it's not a matter of being discreet, if you're running it for like we said, like a tailgate, or for like a wedding reception, or for like a backyard concert, things like that, it's not going to be as good as electric. Other concerns that you're going to look at with your gas generator are going to be fuel. So yes, although we can store fuel like propane for an extended period of time, if you had a dual fuel generator, how much fuel are you really going to be able to store? Not only that, but when we're talking about gas generators, whether it's propane or it's gas, it doesn't really matter. The emissions that it emits are going to be a problem. You can't necessarily just run a gas generator indoors or in any sort of closed environment without having these emissions be a serious health risk. Even on a lot of these generators, they'll recommend that you don't run the generator unless it's 20 or 30 feet away from people or overhead awnings or anything like that. Now I know you could go closer, but the closer you get in proximity to yourself or your residence or a hut or anything like that, or a tent, the emissions safety concern is going to grow. And finally, another big con of the gas generators is going to be maintenance. Okay, so let's move on to the solar generators. This particular solar generator right here is the EcoFlow Delta, which is a relatively new one. It's probably been on the market now for 6 to 12 months, something in that ballpark. Not even 12 months, maybe 6 to 8 months, something along those lines. And this is one of the top of the line solar generators that you can get now. There's a lot of different brands of them. I'm not going to be just talking about this one, but there's companies like Bluetti. Bluetti makes a very good solar generator as well that I have had some experience with. And that one, you can get really big batteries on them, so you can run your stuff for longer. And then you've got other generators like the Jackery, which is maybe a little bit more convenient than this generator in terms of the way that they've aligned the plugs and things like that. So there are some different things with the solar generators that you do want to take into account, and I'll do a different video more in depth on solar generators as a whole, and this particular unit, the EcoFlow Delta. So how about the pros for the electric generators or the solar generators? Pros are going to be pretty abundant. Number one, they're quiet. They're very quiet. Not only that, but they are safe. you can run a solar generator inside of your home. You're not going to have any sort of emissions to deal with or anything like that, and they're not so loud that you can't run it in your home to where it's going to keep you up at night if it was running and the fan kicked on. This particular guy right here is about 30 pounds, and this is the EcoFlow Delta. And then if you went up to the, or not up to, but if you went over to the Bluettis, I think their smaller unit is somewhere around 30-35 pounds, and then the bigger unit is around 40 pounds. So it is starting to get up there with the larger battery capacity that you get to. But in general, they're going to be lighter weight and they're going to be a lot more portable. The big elephant in the room of why you would want a solar generator is going to be endless power. As long as the sun is out, you can charge your system. As long as you've got panels, you can charge your system. In terms of a fuel source, this is far superior to the gas ones in terms of having an infinite amount of fuel as long as you have solar panels that are operating properly. The maintenance on these is little to none. You really have no maintenance with a solar generator. Another pro of the solar generator is going to be how long it actually holds its charge. So if you were to charge this up from the wall, you could actually sit on this without any sort of battery degradation. As long as the battery was in good condition, you could have the same charge and not get any sort of degradation for about a year. That's really terrific. That means this unit, I could charge it up today and it would be good until next spring in 2021, when hopefully this pandemic's over. And you're not going to see any sort of degradation of power from when you charged it on the very first day. Now let's talk about some of the cons of the solar generators as a whole. Now, I just mentioned one of them, which is going to be if you don't have that much sunlight, you are going to be at a disadvantage in terms of you're not going to be able to charge your solar generator. The power on demand is not as forgiving as it is with a gas or propane generator. It's just not. If I need to get this thing going and it's completely depleted and I don't have access to a wall outlet, I can't charge it from my vehicle, and I have to use solar and the sun's not out, maybe you're going to get a tiny bit of power coming out of those panels, but it's not going to be enough to charge us in any sort of significant way. Now, remember, you do have a finite fuel source when you're talking about the gas and the propane. To a degree, I guess you could say that it's somewhat finite with the solar generators as well. But the reality is you will be able to charge it again, but maybe if you had a week of overcast and it was just a blizzard for a week, maybe you're not going to have it, and maybe it would be critically important that you have it at that time. So definitely things to weigh out. Which would you prefer? Typically, solar generators are not going to be able to be as powerful as a gasoline or propane generator. You're not going to get a solar generator where you've got 5,000, 10,000, 20,000 watts. And a big part of that is going to be that it's just going to take so long to charge up something like that, unless it could just have a massive amount of input without damaging the system. So as of right now, you're not going to be able to have as broad of a power spectrum for the solar generators. And finally, the solar footprint. So in order to put out a bunch of solar panels, you're going to have a pretty decent sized area. Now for this guy, I think you can only input 400 watts of solar into it. So let's say you did 400 watt panels, and you're not quite going to be pulling 400 watts from that with the inefficiencies, but let's just say you did 400 watt panels. That's not that bad. Maybe the size of, I don't know, 12, 24, 36, 48, maybe like an 8x8 area. You could get 400 watt panels, but the footprint is going to be bigger. So there is that. Even though it's not noisy like a gas one is, even though that the fuel is easier to come by in terms of the sun, it is going to be a bigger footprint in general to actually charge these with solar panels. With that being said, these solar generators are going to be slightly more expensive nowadays. I think you can get a Honda EU 2000 for around $1,000. With the solar, the upfront cost is maybe going to be a little bit more. Now for this particular unit, it's fairly expensive. It's a $1,400 unit. I didn't have to pay that because I got it when it was quite a bit cheaper. And I think when they first came out, they were around $800 or $900 on the Kickstarter, and then they bumped up to around $1,000 or $1,100, and now they're at $1,400. And they'll probably stay right about at at that $1,400 price point. If you go over to like a Bluetti solar generator, those two, the cheaper one, maybe if you can get some discounts, is going to be around $1,200, and the more expensive one is probably going to be around $1,800 to $2,000. So the initial unit, it seems, for a high quality solar generator is going to be slightly more expensive nowadays compared to a traditional combustion generator that's doing either gasoline or propane. Aside from that, you are, just like the gasoline or the propane, you are going to have to buy some sort of fuel generating device for these, which in other terms would be solar panels. The solar panels, like I mentioned earlier, the off-grid Trek solar panels are very expensive. Those can be, $1,000, $1,500, $2,000, or you can also get cheaper versions for like $100 off of Amazon. You could get a Renogy 100-watt solar panel for like $100, but do be aware the upfront cost is going to be slightly more than the gas generators. Now, in terms of long-term costs, it's going to be a lot more expensive to run a gas, or I keep saying gas, to run a gasoline or a propane generator, and then to upkeep the maintenance and to have the oil and stuff like that. It's, in the long run, it will be more expensive, especially if you run these generators a lot. Okay, so in closing, which generator is going to be right for you? I think if you have a demand for a lot of power for an extended period of days, I think gas is probably going to be the way to go for you if you don't care about the noise. If you're looking for something that's more along the lines of disaster preparedness, I think the solar generators are going to be quite a bit better option for you. Now, in terms of camping, you could probably go either way. If you're powering a bunch of lights and like a stove and stuff like that, you could do either one. I think it's going to be a lot more pleasant to use something like this. Long and the short of it, disaster preparedness, I think the solar generators are far better. For long, heavy use, I think the gas generators are going to be better. So that's for you to decide. Comment below and tell me your thoughts on what you think is going to be better for you and why. And if I missed anything, feel free to comment down below. If you thought this video was entertaining or full of useful information, feel free to click that like button and subscribe to the channel. And that's about it. We will see you in the next one.